And we're live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Jitsi Community Call. I'm going to open the microphone to anyone from the team who would like to update folks on what's going on in the team. It's probably worth reminding that we're still working on optimizations that would allow large conferences. We're actually successfully conducting 500 people conferences on desktop, so that's looking good. We still need to make sure that the sorting makes more sense. That's not really happening right now. Where we're landing is that we're likely just going to change the order of people based on their participation in the dominant speaker set. So that's going to happen in the next 3 or so months. And we may have additional layout changes in the future. One of the things that we're considering, for example, is having the tiles in tile view behave similarly to the main stage video in the stage view. That is, have them expand to take all available real estate. We already did some improvements there. We had a lot of emptiness that we've started filling, but we're still not playing with the aspect ratios of videos in tile view. And it's looking like that's a sensible thing to do, given that we're, especially when we're dealing with actual human video as opposed to desktop. Resizing is not a bad idea. Is anyone from the team ready to share their thing?
Sure. One of the things that we're working on right now is some changes to Octo. The main goal is to make it secure, so that traffic between bridges is encrypted and authenticated. Right now, we are relying on a secure network between bridges, and we want to change that. The way we're approaching it is we are going to make separate connections between each pair of bridges instead of just broadcasting everything. And an additional effect of this is that we are going to be able to do repair on those connections easier. So we'll have retransmissions on those links. We expect that this will take a few months to complete. And you'll soon see changes in GCOFO and the bridge related to it.
That is indeed a very good share. We've been bummed out for the fact that we imposed that extra friction on people looking to use Octo for a while. It's actually been extra friction on us as well, because it's painful to maintain all these VPNs in a dynamic environment. So that's pretty cool. All right. Anyone else would like to share anything? Jay, would you like to talk a little bit about the state of VP9, for example, or maybe also our transition to Unified?
Yeah, sure. So we've been running Chrome and Unified on Meet Jitsi since the last release. And we've also fixed the issues that we had in P2P connections. So we've turned it on there as well. So in the next release, both the P2P and JVB connections will be running in unified plan, and we'll push that to stable as well. And we haven't received any issues, from the community about unified plan switch. So we're planning to make it default, so that users don't have to configure it on their deployments. and it's Chrome's. It's in beta right now. I mean, Chrome beta is using Unified Plan, and it has deprecated Plan B already, and it's going to be in stable by end of August, August 25th, I believe. So you will have to update all your deployments before then.
Yeah, we should probably look into making. When do you think we'll make that the default in master?
This next stable release, I think we should be able to do it.
Okay, because we should be able to give people at least a month to upgrade there.
Yeah, so we can plan it sometime around like July end.
All right. You all heard Jaya. If you don't upgrade your Jitsi deployments before the end of August, your meetings will not work with Chrome unless you get an origin trial exception. But if you're going to spend time on this, you might as well just upgrade. There are other things coming up with the upgrade. We now have screen sharing with, is Tudor here? I'm not sure. We now have screen sharing with, the ability to use screen sharing as a virtual background, which lets you do the weatherman presentation. And kind of like that, although the virtual background body cropping that we use isn't handling that especially gracefully, but hey, it works. So it can be helpful. You can also share videos that way and show yourself on top of videos. So it's cool. It's cool. Anyone else would like to share anything? Okay, I'm opening the floor. Sorry, I'm opening the mic to the floor. Are there any questions or comments from the community?
Hi. Quick question.
Hello.
Quick question about, we're looking at adding a feature to be able to do concurrent screen share along with, like, you basically send the desktop stream along with the camera stream instead of, this current approach where we can kind of composite the screen share or composite the camera stream on top of the screen share using Canvas compositing. The downside of that approach is that you kind of end up with dumbing down the screen share, which typically has to run at a lower frame rate to do that. And
you mean resolution?
Yeah, resolution and as screen.
You don't. There's no impact on the frame rate. In fact, you get better frame rate if you can compose images with the two of them. But there are compromises on the resolution as well. Indeed.
Right. So
so we've discussed that in the past, and it's a very hefty project. It would require a lot of work on the bridge. There are potentially some workarounds, including workarounds that you could do without changing anything in libjitsi meet. I know you guys are using stuff at that level, so you could simply set up an alternative conference for desktop, and you can send it there. That's probably the lowest resistance path at this point.
Yeah, so that's what we're kind of debating whether. So first off, like, number one, if I'm curious if there's a preference, because if we work on this, it would be something we'd love to contribute back. And so just getting a sense of like what your preference would be. I think the other alternative is we're looking at sort of maybe even existing standards. I think we came across a standard, at least for getting more optimization of the RTCP on the RTCP side, so that there's less redundancy. Like if we were to combine all the streams, if we did it at a lower level instead of having two separate sessions, if we just added a video stream and a camera stream and sent them both, versus what I agree sounds like the simpler thing of just having kind of like, and I think this is what Hangouts does also. They basically have like, it's like another participant basically that gets sent.
Right, another participant is, yes. Indeed, you could either do it with another participant or you could do it with an entirely separate conference. So if you do another participant, you can essentially handle it by setting last end to 0 so that other participant doesn't get anything. Now the problem is that it'll be tricky to not have the local participant receive its own desktop, right? That's what's going to be some, because I don't think we have specific endpoint filtering.
That's no, the message format supports it. Should be pretty easy to do. Just add a constraint.
Right. Okay.
I think what we don't support right now would be to not receive any audio.
That's a good. You could potentially just do that at the SDP level, no? You could just have the audio line inactive.
That would not cause GCOF when the bridge to not send audio.
Oh, really?
I see, because we don't want them to get double audio. Is that the issue? Like the sender?
Yeah. And it's definitely a solvable problem. It requires some work on the back end.
Okay, right. So all of these are kind of go away if you do it at a separate conference that just doesn't have any audio. Although, yeah, we will drop it actually, because Chrome wouldn't send it, and if anything gets sent, it would get dropped by the bridge anyway. So a separate conference would probably be a more achievable workaround at this stage. Boris, do you agree with that?
I'm worried that a separate conference means separate bandwidth allocation running in parallel.
But that's going to be true even with a separate participant, because it's a separate peer connection. And that is absolutely a consideration. I don't think it's a devastating consideration, because again, I believe it's true Hangouts do it the same way, and you might hit some problems in certain cases. But I don't think that even if you run them together, things aren't going to develop that differently.
Sorry, my point is not for the sender, but for receivers. If you have a single conference, the bridge will know that it needs to prioritize the screen sharing. But if they're two completely separate conferences, the bridge sending to a receiver they'll basically compete with each other.
Yeah, you could probably handle that with some client smarts, I think, based on how would you do it? Well, there would be some quirkiness indeed, even if you either you have to do some extra work, but overall, I think it is achievable to do things that way. Now we could have a little conversation internally to see if we can come up with a decent plan on how you would have to do this if we were to make changes within the bridge, and whether we think that's something we can reasonably carve out as an independent piece of work.
I was about to ask, does it make any difference once we have all switched to unified plan? Would that make things easier for basically
No, because unified plan doesn't actually solve any real things in the real world.
I know, but at least you have like multiple videos in one peer connection. Then it's the bridge which needs to be able to handle that. Is that
No, that's not. The signaling has never been the issue here. I mean, surely we don't have the support for signaling with Plan B. I don't know that signaling was going to be a particularly big hurdle in this case. But really, it's the plenty of assumptions within the bridge that every endpoint only produces one video stream. That's the biggest issue here.
So because of that, it sounds like we should avoid ever going with the approach where you send 2 video streams. Like that would just be too many hurdles, it sounds like, right?
No, I mean, that's the reason why I initially suggested the mitigations, But it sounded like you were interested in going in potentially contributing the work within the bridge. And the work within the bridge consists in removing those assumptions everywhere and adding the necessary support.
Okay. So okay. Yeah. I mean, if that's my main thing, is like understanding what is the preferred thing. I think we were assuming that you would either be a separate kind of participant, but then we have a lot of these other weird workarounds we have to deal with, or, you know, making the support for multiple video streams viable. But you know, that would just be
again, to me, it's a separate conference or making the support for multiple video streams viable.
Okay, or that, yeah. Okay. Cool.
Jonathan, did I hear that you were trying to say something? Or did I miss you?
Yeah, I was going to, but then I don't remember what it was. I don't think it was that important.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you. And if there's any updates, happy to, please let me know, or happy to help in any way.
All right. Any other questions?
There's some in the chat.
Otherwise, I can produce other snappy retorts to people who talk about unified.
It's like you have opinions about it. Yes. There's some questions in the chat. I don't know if you can see it.
So the question is, if we will have a multiple Jibri and we have access to a public and private IP, is it possible that, I mean, what is the current condition if Jibri will join the call? Is it through a private internet connection or from the public internet connection?
Well, that's a matter of deployment. It's Jibris are just Meet participants, so they're going to use ICE to negotiate their connectivity, and whether that ends up using a private IP address, or it probably will end up using. I don't think our Jibris even have public IP addresses actually, and I don't think we have the option. So if you have a public address that's available locally on the interface, it will get picked up by Chrome and used in the ICE negotiation. I don't think that we currently support the sort of mapping that we have in the bridge, where we can tell Jibri that a certain address exists. I don't think we have that. So
yeah, if you're talking about the signaling, that depends on how the DNS name you're using resolves. So if the DNS name resolves to an internal IP address, then it will use the internal. If it resolves to an external, use the external. So that's a matter of how you configured the DNS on your cloud services.
Wait,
and the host names. So basically, the Jibri has to know what host name it uses to connect to Meet, right? For the initial web and WebSocket signaling and the XMPP.
Oh, yeah. Did you mean the IP address of the Jibri itself, or did you mean the IP address of the Meet installation?
So the Jitsi Meet installation is also in, let's suppose, in the AWS on the cloud, and the Jibri is also on a cloud. But we want that Jibri should join with a private internet connection in the,
what
AWS.
Does the private internet connection mean? You mean from the private address of the Jibri to what? To a private address of the Meet?
Address of the Jitsi Meet instance, so that we can get the better quality of the recording. Like if the Jibri will, let's suppose Jitsi is hosted in AWS, and if we will host the Jibri on DigitalOcean, then definitely I think Jibri will connect the Jitsi video bridge through a public IP, public internet connection. But if we put both the services, Jitsi JVB and the Jibri in the AWS, we can do that. I think that Jibri will connect the Jitsi's video bridge through the private internet connection. So if it is in the same network, then we can get the better video recording than the public.
I think we have different connections between Jibri and the servers, and the answer is different for each one. But the main one you care about, the one that transports audio and video, is established over ICE. So what Emil initially said about if the network is set up and they are accessible to each other, it will probably be picked up.
Look, the easiest answer here, I think, is just make your Jibris have only the address that you want them to use, and then they'll use it.
Okay, so in the host, I should put the private IP.
Just have your networking configured such that the only networking possible between the Jibri and the bridge is the one that you want. So yes, if that's private IP, then make sure that's the only one that exists.
Okay.
I don't actually think going into AWS shenanigans, I don't think that you really give up anything if you, from a private address, you get to the public address of the bridge, but maybe you do, I don't know. I don't really care. Just make sure you only have the networking that you want to use.
Okay. Got it.
Any other questions?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. Fleurs here. We had great fun at the last hackathon, and I've got questions around two topics. One is pull request. We put one, and we're planning to make a few more. How does this process go? The second one is around translations, getting the main.json from a master. I managed to make the complete Dutch translation, except for the screen sharing, because that's a native component. So is there any way to force this native component to also be translatable if the browser of the client is on a different language, or is that impossible? And on top of that, in Drupal, we have like a translate.drupal.org where everybody in the community can add their own language strings. So you have a complete picture of all the JSONs that need to be filled to be a complete language. Is there any ambition to get this up and running, something like that? Or can we help around with that?
I was distracted by the real world, so if someone else wants to answer, please do. Otherwise, you're going to have to repeat the question.
I don't think we can force the browser. So those strings that are native for the browser should be the responsibility of the browser, and I would guess that they should be translated already. And for the second question about, we had internal discussion a year ago, and we've chosen crowding, but because of resources and some legal stuff, we haven't had made any progress on that. So that is still to happen. So we will have like crowding instance, and like people can go and translate things there. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay, and the second topic is around pull request. We have one that's up since the hackathon for the ordered raised hands list. Do we need to add other features there, or do we have reviews, or how does it work to get things into Jitsi? Because we have several other plans for shared cursors and shared browsing and those kind of things. So I'm curious how this process can be sped up.
So there's a big amount of work happening on what we call advanced moderation right now. And that's kind of blocking other things that are in the same general area, including the raise hand stuff. We hope that, Damien, I don't know, what do you think? We hope that the advanced moderation work should be complete within the next 30 days. Do you think that's reasonable, Damien?
Yeah, that is reasonable. Yes.
And then at that point, we will be able to get back to the things that were in the general vicinity. What other things do you have in mind?
Shared cursor, so you can actually point within your presentation. Other peoples can do that. That's already something which is in Offmeet, one abstracted library coming from Mozilla's Together.js. And the other one would be the same way as we can now share a video, that you can share any URL. That can be like a Google or Nextcloud presentation, or it can be any other poll or Kahoot, you name it. It doesn't matter which one. But then in real time, so everybody's looking at the same page with the same time frame.
The same page with the same what? Sorry.
With the same timeline of browsing, the same actions. So you share
That's pretty
one
cool.
browser.
How are you going to handle the? So I'm sorry. How are you going to send the browser? Are you going to send it as video, or are you going to be essentially everyone is going to be loading the page?
Everybody's going to be loading the page, and with the ability to share cursors, you can make like the same as a dominant speaker, dominant cursor, which you can click around, and then having the hidden XMPP negotiation between all the clients, you can find out, okay, which one is actually loading now, which URL is loading now. That's the general concept. It's up for improvements or ideation.
Yeah, if you guys are interested in getting that integrated in Meet, I think we're going to have to discuss the product side of things a little bit more. Specifically
Sure.
how exactly this is going to work. Once you get to it, please drop me an email so that we can have a discussion. Yeah, it does sound like something that's generally interesting.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, please. If you have any questions, ask them here. Okay, so I see that there's a question. There's a question about transparency reports. And also, I have a question from someone asking me to blur out their video in YouTube. I don't want to have to do this, folks. Like, I have other things to do with my day than go out and blur out your cameras. Please make sure you turn them off if you don't want them on the community call. It's a community call. Whatever goes out here is public, and I don't want to do your work. It costs you 1 click to not have video. It costs me 20 minutes mucking about with YouTube to go and remove your video. So it's kind of frustrating, as you can probably tell. There's a question about transparency reports. We have thought about it. We thought we can do it. It's not trivial in terms of the amount of time and the amount of work that we have to do to get this streamlined through our legal parts of the organization. So I don't know that we're going to have the time to set up something official there. I'm going to remind people that let me say this as a summary. We have never had anything shady as a request. We have never had anything that can be considered Cloud Act or any such thing with regard to people joining on Meet Jitsi. If we had such a thing, we will not be able to answer it because we don't have any content. We don't know anything about users. The only thing that gets logged for load generation purposes, and we may remove that in the future, sorry, for load management purposes, is an IP address, and the only requests we've ever had involve children and the sort of content that children shouldn't be exposed to. And again, even those requests, we're not able to provide any information other than a non-exhaustive set of IP addresses. And again, that might actually change in the future. We may stop storing even that as we find other ways to properly analyze the sources of traffic that we have. Hope that answers the question. Any other questions or comments? All right. All right, folks. Have a wonderful 2 weeks and see you again later. Bye.